Real numbers. In algebra, we deal with all sorts of real numbers. Some of the most complicated ones are square roots. So, for these first few examples, we're going to be estimating square roots to the nearest integer. So we're just going to round to the nearest number. Now, for this first example, we have the square root of 389. So what we're going to be looking for is two roots that square root of 389 falls in between. 389, and what is it smaller than and what is it bigger than? So if we look for our perfect squares that are close to this number, we should be able to continue our perfect square list, and we should see that 400 is a perfect square, and also 369 is a perfect square. So the perfect squares would be square root of 369 is actually 19, which is going to be less than square root of 389, which is going to be less than the square root of 400, which you would find to be 20. So what this is going to tell me is that my square root of 389 is going to be smaller than 20, more than 19, and now we just need to figure out which one it rounds to. Now, since 389 is closer to 400 than it is to 369, we're going to round it to 20. So we can say the square root of 389 is approximately equal to 20. And that's our final answer. So this next one, what we have is, we're estimating to the nearest integer, the square root of 34. So perfect squares that are near 34 would be 36, which is pretty close to 34, and one smaller than 36 is 25. Square root of 25 is 5, which is going to be less than square root of 34, which is less than square root of 36 is 6. Now, since obviously 34 is closer to 36, so we're going to round the square root of 34 to about 6. Square root of 34 is approximately equal to 6, and that is your final answer. For this next example, we're going to compare different types of real numbers in different forms. So what we want to do is order the numbers from least to greatest. Now, in order to do this, the easiest way to do it is to start by converting them all to decimals. So if I convert them all to decimals, the square root of 4 is 2. 0.4 is already a decimal. Negative 2/3 written as a decimal would be negative 0.6 repeating. The square root of 2, if you would type that into the calculator, what you would get would be a 1.414. Alright, so the next one is negative 1.5. or 1.5, which is just negative 1.5. So now they're all written as decimals, so now that's easier to see what goes where. So the next thing we're going to do is rearrange the numbers least to greatest. So when I'm doing that, I'm going to just kind of underline and reorder them. So the smallest number would be the biggest negative, so I have negative 1.5. And then the other negative, negative 0.6 repeating, and then the next smallest number would be 0.4, and then we have 1.414, and it keeps going after that, 1.414, and then the only number left is 2, so that must be the last one. So now I have everything in order. But this is not my final answer because I didn't have decimals for all of my original numbers. So I have to put my original numbers back in. So we're going to 1.5 was negative 1.5 in the original problem. Negative 0.6 repeating was actually the 2/3. So I'm going to write negative 2/3. Then the next one was 0.4, which was 0.4 in the original problem. And then we have 1.414, which that was our rounded version of the square root of 2. So I'm going to write square root of 2. And finally, 2 was written as the square root of 4. So I'm going to write square root of 4. And that is your final answer. For this next example, we're going to use different properties and mental math strategies in order to solve the problem. A movie ticket cost $7.75, a drink cost $2.40, and popcorn cost $1.25. What is the total cost for a ticket, a drink, and popcorn? Well, a ticket costs $7.75 plus a drink costs $2.40 plus popcorn, which costs $1.25. Now, if I want to just use mental math to solve this, what I would do is I would take $7.75 and $1.25 and add those together. Because I know that'll round out nicely, and then I'm going to add my $2.40 later. So what I would get would be $7.75 plus $1.25 would be $9 plus $2.40. 9 plus 2 is $11.40. So it's going to cost $11.40. Final answer. Now for these last types of examples, we're just going to rewrite the expression equivalently by just simplifying the expressions and using our properties. So for this first one, what I'm going to do is rearrange and multiply my numbers together and then multiply on the end. What I mean by that is we're going to write 5 times 3 times n. So what I have would be 5 times 3 is 15 times n. So 15n is your final answer. Next one, we're adding this time. I'm just going to rewrite it and write my numbers and my part with the b. So what I have is 7b plus 4 plus 8. 4 plus 8 is 12, so my final answer is 7b plus 12. And the last one here, I'm going to rewrite this division and multiplication problem. 6 times x times y over y. I basically put each variable together. Well, y divided by y is just 1, so I have 6 times x times 1, so my final answer is 6 times x, 6x. Final answer. So those are your notes over real numbers. Go through some practice problems. Make sure you can do all these different types of problems and show your work and understand how it works. And then you should be ready for your quiz over this material.